My parents were migrant workers, and they were working up there in the beet fields. And because of the very fact that we constantly were moving, I never started school in kindergarten. It was a real different experience for me because all I could speak was Spanish. That's all we ever used at home. Going back and forth as a migrant, we always traveled in a little group, it seemed like. We always had other people with us who spoke Spanish, and their children spoke Spanish also. So it was rather difficult when we were in situations where you had to speak English. When I started school in Omaha, it was a real traumatic change for me because this was one of the first times that I actually was thrown together with other children that were not of Mexican descent. My father was pretty old-fashioned and kept us pretty much to ourselves. He never would let us go really outside of our yard. And since there were so many of us, he always said we didn't need to go anywhere to find playmates. So it was real different for me in school. To begin with, since I did have a Spanish name, it was one of those names that you use for men and women. And being children, children don't mean to be mean to each other, but sometimes they hurt your feelings when they don't understand someone who has a different name than they do. And they started sort of making fun of my name sometimes. And the teacher couldn't pronounce it anyway. So it seemed like the best thing to do for the teacher was to ask me what was the equivalent. Or she wondered what the equivalent of Jesus was. And of course they didn't pronounce it Jesus. They would call me Jesus. And you can imagine what kind of little snickers went on about that. So the equivalent of it was Jesse. So that's how I